Reddit, what does your kid do that creeps you out? My 2-year-old daughter has a satchel filled with Peppa Pig books. She pulls them out one at a time, licks the cover, then puts them back neatly. I don't have kids, but when I was young, I used to just sit alone for hours hugging my niece staring at my dollhouse. I didn't move the toys, but just imagined the stories in my head. I bet that looked really creepy to anyone observing. You'd absolutely love The Sims. My daughter used to tell stories about the time she was with her other mommy from a long time ago. This was when she was 3. Whenever we tried to ask her more about it, she would always end with, well, that was a long time ago before the kangaroos ate me. I'm sure she meant dingo, easily confused. My son, 4, sometimes talk about his other parents from old times, before we were his parents. Apparently he is reincarnated. My brother used to talk about all of the things he used to do when he was older. So, I was eating my breakfast with my 7-year-old niece, who was sitting on the table. Niece, do you like milk in your tea? Me, yes. Niece, do you like sugar in your cornflakes? Me, yes. Niece, do you like screams in your head? Dot. Me, what? Niece, slowly and deliberately, do you like screams in your head? Dot. She's 15 now and scares me more than ever. My 5-year-old daughter thinks she's ace. Help. You're gonna need an exorcist and about 50 pounds of corned beef hash. My 3-year-old niece suffocates my 1-year-old nephew whenever she thinks nobody is watching her. You should do something about that. When I was 16, I was babysitting for a 9-month-old baby. After putting her down in her crib sound asleep, I quietly walk downstairs and sit on the couch to watch a little TV. I start to hear the baby fussing and crying on the baby monitor, so I head back upstairs only to find the baby sleeping soundly in her crib. I was a little confused and thought this was kinda weird, but I wasn't totally creeped out yet. When I got downstairs and heard the baby on the baby monitor crying again, I got the craziest chill down my spine. Head back upstairs. Baby in front of me still sound asleep. Back downstairs I am sitting and looking at possessed baby monitor when all of a sudden a very low, gargly voice comes on over the monitor saying, "Hush, Barbie." I turned that crap off and sat in silence until the parents came home. Come to find out, the neighbors had the same baby monitor system, and apparently this was not the first time they had picked up the sound from the neighbor's house. A warning would have been nice. My god, that would have given me a heart attack. My youngest brother is 4, and he's terrifying. A while ago, my mum put him in a t-shirt that had "It wasn't me" written on it. When she read it out to him, he laughed and said, "Haha, it wasn't me. Like, I could get a knife, mummy, and stab you. It wasn't me. Seriously, that boy scares me." Also, the other day, he told us that when he was a lady, he had a baby, but then his girlfriend stole it. When I was a nanny, this 6-year-old boy had this Christmas elf doll that sat on his shelf and looked terrifying. The kid would tell me every day how it came to life at night and danced around his room and told him secrets. One time I made the mistake of asking what kind of secrets, and the kid freaked out and shouted at me, "I can't tell you." He told me not to tell anyone, then he stood on his bed and shouted at the doll, "Move, move. I've seen him move, move." Jesus freaking Christ. Nuke the doll from orbit. My 4-year-old son regularly grips his penis from the outside of his pants, in a sort of claw-like fashion, between his forefingers and palm. Then he'll pull it outwards, as if he's trying to lengthen it. If you ask him what he's doing, he will always respond, "Just keeping my penis in tip-top shape." I had a nephew that would walk around in public and do the same thing. When his mother would tell him to stop, he would loudly proclaim no. I tease mine, she could never muster a rebuttal after that. My 3-year-old was in bed for the night, a time during which she often sings songs to her dolls. 2 floors down I was listening on the monitor as I most likely surfed Reddit. Her song was sweet and I was fairly moved. I love my mommy and my daddy. They are my best friends and I love them so much. This verse went on for a couple of minutes and I thought it was the greatest song ever. Then it took a somewhat darker turn, and then they died, and it was just me and my Barbie. That last part in a little 3-year-old girl voice over a cheap baby monitor was pretty chilling. And then a second voice, "Dolls, Starts singing along, just you and me, just you and me. My 4-year-old daughter sleepwalks and talks sometimes. I woke up early one morning while it was still dark out. I showered and whatnot, then went to leave my bedroom. I opened the door and there she is, standing down the hallway, backlit by a nightlight we keep in the hallway in this slumped but standing position, just blabbering, mumbling something. I couldn't help but think of the Dawn of the Dead when that little girl just launches herself and nabs that dude. So what am I to do? I calmly turned on my heels, shut the door and leaned against it, fully preparing myself for the zombie onslaught. Apparently she was coherent enough to see that I had left her, so she starts whining and it woke her up enough to actually speak, so I knew that she wasn't a zombie. My son is only 2 weeks old, so nothing yet, but this thread reminded me of back when I was studying to become a teacher. During the summer breaks I'd work as a holiday temp at a kindergarten. There was this one kid, a 3-year-old boy, who virtually needed 24 hours supervision. He didn't have a grown-up covering him all the time but close, and we had to be 2 outside on playground duty when he was there. Anyway, one time he was in the sandbox and I was playing football with some other kids. I look over and I see him picking up a metal shovel about 1 meter long. He lifts it over his head and walks towards a little girl who's also in the box. At that point I've begun running shouting Michael no, but he proceeds to whack her over the back of her head, thank God hitting her with the flat side. He's about to fricking hit her a second time when I arrived to stop him. The girl was flat out and bleeding, but luckily not much else happened to her. After that we had to keep an adult on the little psycho full time. I don't know what happened to him later on, but I'm guessing he's in prison or in a mental ward now. He had no idea what was right or wrong, and apart from onsets of enormous rage he never showed any emotions nor empathy at all. Sociopath in the making. When I was little we lived in a creepy house in Miami. My cousins were our neighbors, which was really awesome since we were all around the same age and got to play all the time. One night one of my cousins slept over, we were like 6 or 7, and I woke up the next morning and found her sitting up staring at one of my creepy windows. She has tears in her eyes, I guess from not blinking in a while or being really frightened. I asked her what was wrong and she acted startled hearing my voice. She said, I tried waking you up, you wouldn't wake up, there was a boy here, and kept putting his mouth back on, and she motioned someone hitting their jaw against their face to reattach it. What the frick? Fast forward to years and years later, her and her family moved to Orlando and I brought it up one night at a family gathering saying something like, hey dude, you remember that one time you saw a little boy in my room without his jaw? She completely lost her crap, ran out of the pool we were all in and went inside. This is not mine, but one my colleague told me earlier tonight before I saw this thread. His young daughter regularly tells he and his wife they are not her real parents. They are. She has names for her real parents. The dad is Richard and the mom is Bichard. Bichard died when the daughter was a baby, but she keeps it up further than that. Whenever they give her something new to try, his example was pomegranate, she will offhandedly remark, Richard and I had pomegranate at the beach just last week. She has a full backstory for them. They lived in a 3-room house with moderate furnishings and not a lot of money. She can describe the car they had, the things they would do, everything. Richard is not an invisible friend either. She has 9 of those, all with weird names like Fleeb. Bichard and Fleeb has a delightful ring to it. Could be a soap opera, a law firm, or some kind of industrial giant. My 3-year-old still sometimes crawls when he's playing. And when he gets really hyper and crawls really fast and his limbs clamber and move all over the place and make a lot of noise. It's very poltergeisty. Freaks me the heck out. Record it, set it to yakety sax. Freakiness turns to hilarity. I don't have kids, but I do have 3-year-old twin cousins. Once we were playing in their backyard and I picked up a toy rake. To impress them with an awesome feature ring of strength, I threw it across the yard. Overshot, it hit cement, and broke. At first they thought it was funny, then they got upset and asked why I broke it. I explained that it was an accident and that I'd buy them a new one. They go back to being happy, but suddenly one picked up the broken pieces and took them to the picnic table. He had a hand on each piece and started swirling them in circles, and then started chanting. Yes, chanting. In a monotone expressionless voice with a vacant stare. We know you broke it, daddy. We know you broke it, daddy. We know you broke it, daddy. First of all, I broke it, not their dad. He wasn't even home. Then his brother walks up, takes a broken piece, and starts moving it in sync with his brother and starts up the same chant, in the same creepy monotone way, including the stare. We know you broke it, daddy. We know you broke it, daddy. This honestly went on for a solid 3 minutes. I kept calling their names and trying to get them to play. Finally they snapped out of it and ran off to play. It was Suiwaru creepy, like Children of the Corn Village of the Damned creepy. I later went in and told my aunt what happened. She told me that they often go into creepy little modes pretty often and have scared her before. Man, I love those kids, so strange. My daughter, 9, cuts the heads, or in some cases limbs, off of one stuffed animal and sews it onto the other in an attempt to make the most pretty one. With the extra pieces she sometimes sews them into strange, mismatched malformed creatures. At least she's not wasteful. You should post some pics of the stuffed animal hybrids. My 3-year-old kid thinks she can very literally fly. Dad, don't worry about me falling. I'll just fly down to the ground. I think this is why parents look so old. My friend's 5-year-old brother sleepwalks. They have an alarm system set up to respond to movement in the lower part of their house. One night it goes off, so everyone gets up and notice the little guy isn't in his bed. They go downstairs and my friend finally finds him in the basement sitting cross-legged facing the open door leading outside. His eyes wide open but he's still in a state of sleep. He asks his brother why the door was open and he looks at him and says, "I'm letting them in." When my son was about 4 he had an imaginary friend named George, but it went beyond just imaginary. I would hear him have conversations with George all the time, and when I tried to convince him that George wasn't real, he would protest. He would often mention very adult things that George would say, although I can't remember them right now. The creepy thing was that now my son is 10 and the other day in the car he mentioned George. Not like, hey, remember that imaginary friend I had? Ha ha ha. But instead, whatever happened to that guy? I laughed thinking he was joking, but he wasn't. When I tried to tell him he was imaginary he thought I was joking. I could see him in the rear view mirror pondering the whole situation. When I was about 18, my 4-year-old sister came to the table where I and my mother were preparing dinner. She reached onto the table and grabbed a broad knife whose blade was as long as her little arm. I eyed her, ready to reach out and snatch it if she looked like she was going to walk away. My family believed in teaching us not to be unnecessarily afraid of objects, so she could hold it if she stood still. She half turned, and I reached over to grasp her shoulder, but just before my fingers touched her, she looked up at me, smiled sweetly, and slid the knife back onto the table. "Oh, number," she said, in her high, dulcet voice, as if weighing options. "Much too small," and then she walked away, leaving Mom and I staring after her. My family believed in teaching us not to be unnecessarily afraid of objects. Always a good family value. My 18-month-old son laughs when the mom dies in Finding Nemo, every time, hysterically. As his mother, I am concerned for my safety. My brother crucified a frog when he was like 7. He's 28 and in prison now. Even frogs have crosses to bear. I was standing by myself at an airport once when this 4 or 5-year-old kid who I've never seen before points at me and starts yelling, "Bad man, bad man." People started moving away from me. It was awkward. When I was in the service, my mom, sister and little nephew came out to visit me. He was probably 3 or 4 at the time. We were driving through the mountains and from the backseat we heard him say, "I remember when we had to blow through these hills to build the road. A lot of guys died." When we asked him what he meant, he acted like he didn't know what we were talking about, or he'd forgotten already. It was creepy as frick. You have been visited by a normal duck. He doesn't do much, but he'd like you to like the video. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video, or don't. Either way, have a great day, you magnificent people.